In 1991, Omni Hotels lost every flagship property it owned in a single financial event. Not most of them, not the worst performing ones. Every flagship, the Omni Berkshire Place in Manhattan, the Omni Park Central in New York, the Omni Shoreham in Washington, D.C., the Omni Rosen in Orlando, transferred out of Omni's operational control through a debt restructuring whose scope reflected the specific vulnerability of a hotel company that had expanded aggressively through the 1980s on leverage, whose service requirements the 1990 recession's revenue per available room contraction made impossible to meet simultaneously across the entire portfolio. The company that emerged from that 1991 restructuring had the Omni name, the Omni operational infrastructure, and the Omni workforce. It did not have its hotels. The lenders had those. What happened next is the forensic subject of this episode. A hotel company that had been stripped to its brand and its management capability, rebuilding a portfolio of flagship urban hotels over the subsequent 3 decades. Not through re-acquisition of its original properties, but through management contracts, selective new development, and the specific strategy of anchoring new Omni properties to convention centers and mixed-use developments whose public subsidy requirements made an established hotel management brand a credible and necessary partner. Most hotel companies in this channel's archive appear as the mechanism of failure: the leveraged acquirer who paid too much, the private equity operator who extracted too aggressively, the management team that deferred renovation until the covenant breach made the decision for them. Omni is the recovery, the documented case of a hotel company using the specific characteristics of its operational capability and brand positioning to rebuild after a financial loss whose scale would have eliminated most competitors. The recovery took 30 years. It is not complete in the sense that Omni has not recovered its 1989 portfolio scale. It is complete in the sense that Omni operates today as a viable, expanding upper upscale hotel brand with convention center adjacent properties in Dallas, Nashville, Louisville, Atlanta, and approximately 60 other locations, a portfolio whose development model would not have been available to the company in 1989. Because the convention center anchor strategy requires the kind of established brand credibility that only operational survival across a financial restructuring produces. Subscribe now. Because the Omni recovery documents what a hotel company's most durable asset actually is, and it is not the real estate. The 1991 Omni Hotels restructuring was produced by the intersection of 3 simultaneous pressures that this channel's analytical archive has documented in different contexts across multiple case files. The 1990 recession's revenue per available room contraction, the savings and loan crisis's credit market disruption documented in case file 056, and the specific debt structures that the 1980s hotel development boom had produced across the upper upscale segment. Omni had expanded through the mid to late 1980s through a combination of property acquisitions and management contract additions, whose aggregate leverage reflected the decade's credit availability rather than the hotel market's long-term sustainable operating performance. The Omni portfolio's debt service requirements in 1990 had been calibrated to revenue per available room projections whose optimism bias the 1990 recession then exposed in the specific manner that case file 060's hotel bankruptcy anatomy documents as the universal mechanism: covenant breach, forbearance, resolution. The resolution at Omni was atypical in its scale and in its specific outcome. Rather than individual property bankruptcies producing individual ownership transitions, the Omni restructuring produced a portfolio-level transfer in which the lenders, led by the Japanese Seibu Railway Group, whose TBS Hotel subsidiary had acquired Omni in 1987 for approximately $412 million, took control of the flagship properties, while the operating management structure remained intact under continuing Omni leadership. This specific restructuring outcome, lenders taking the real estate while the management company retains the brand and the operational capability, is the outcome that most hotel management companies cannot survive, because most hotel management companies have conflated the management capability with the real estate ownership. Omni's leadership in 1991 understood the distinction clearly enough to preserve what was preservable: the brand, the operational systems, the management relationships, and the workforce capability that would allow Omni to manage hotels it did not own. The covenant that Omni's leadership read correctly in 1991, when every incentive was to fight the restructuring and attempt to retain ownership, was the one embedded in the relationship between the real estate and the management capability. The real estate was leveraged beyond what the market could sustain, and the management capability was what the market would continue to pay for regardless of who owned the real estate. The convention center anchor strategy that Omni developed across the 1990s and 2010s to rebuild its portfolio reflects the specific intersection of urban development, economics, and hotel brand positioning that the 1991 restructuring had left Omni uniquely positioned to exploit. American cities invest in convention centers on the public benefit rationale that the convention business they attract will generate hotel nights, restaurant meals, retail spending, and tax revenue sufficient to justify the public subsidy. As Case File 097 documents, the economic impact projections supporting those investments are systematically overstated. What Case File 097 does not document is the specific hotel market implication. A new convention center without an adjacent hotel partner of sufficient quality and scale to serve the convention's sleeping room block is a convention center that will not attract the highest quality convention business. Because the major convention and trade show market requires a seamless sleeping room relationship that the convention center's standalone existence cannot provide. Cities that build convention centers need hotel partners. Hotel brands that have demonstrated urban upper upscale management capability need convention center adjacency to justify new development. The intersection of those two requirements created the specific market opportunity that Omni rebuilt on. The Omni Nashville Hotel, opened in 2013 adjacent to the Music City Center Convention Center, is the most documented example of the model. A 800-room upper upscale hotel developed through a public-private partnership in which the city of Nashville provided infrastructure support and guaranteed minimum room block purchases, and Omni provided the brand, the operational management, and the development partnership credibility that a major convention hotel requires. The Nashville model produced results that validated the convention center anchor strategy: high occupancy driven by convention business that the Music City Center's programming generated, supplemented by the Nashville leisure market's substantial independent demand. The specific revenue per available room performance that the Nashville property achieved validated the model for subsequent Omni Convention Center partnerships in Louisville, Atlanta, and other markets. The brand preservation question that the 1991 restructuring raised, whether the Omni name retained sufficient market recognition and credibility to rebuild a portfolio around after losing every flagship, was answered through the specific combination of management contract retention and upper upscale market positioning that Omni's leadership maintained across the restructuring period. Hotel brands survive ownership restructurings when three conditions are simultaneously maintained. The operational system continues to function at the standard the brand promises. The workforce whose service delivery defines the guest experience is retained, and the market's recognition of the brand as a credible quality signal is not disrupted by the ownership transition's public visibility. Omni's 1991 restructuring met all three conditions in ways that the hotel bankruptcies this channel has documented across its archive often do not. The operational system continued under the same management leadership. The workforce was retained through the transition. The public visibility of the restructuring, while documented in the trade press, did not produce the kind of service disruption that translates brand damage into revenue per available room decline. The brand survived because the management capability survived. The management capability survived because Omni's leadership understood that it was the brand's custodian, not its owner, and that custodianship is what the market pays for even when the real estate ownership has been transferred to the lenders. The institutional insight that the Omni recovery documents is therefore the inverse of the institutional denial this channel has documented across its archive, where the private equity acquisition model denies that the management capability requires capital investment to sustain the brand premium it charges for. Omni demonstrated that the brand premium can be sustained through management capability alone when the capital investment in the physical plant is the lender's problem. The lenders took the buildings. Omni took the lesson. The Omni Hotels portfolio today spans approximately 60 properties across the United States, including the flagship convention center properties in Nashville, Dallas, Atlanta, Louisville, and Boston, the historic properties that the brand's upper upscale positioning attracts in markets that value both convention capability and architectural authenticity, and the resort properties that complete a portfolio whose geographic and product type diversity reflects 30 years of deliberate rebuilding rather than the aggressive leverage expansion that produced the 1991 collapse. What the Omni recovery reveals in the context of this channel's 101 case archive is the specific hierarchy of durable assets in hotel company finance. The real estate is the most visible asset, the most leveraged asset, and the first asset to transfer when the leverage becomes unsustainable. The brand and the management capability are the less visible assets, the uncharged assets, and the assets that survive the real estate transfer available to rebuild from when the financial crisis resolves. Every hotel company in this channel's archive that has failed has treated the real estate as the primary asset and the management capability as its expression. Omni discovered in 1991 that the relationship is the reverse. The management capability is the primary asset, and the real estate is the medium through which it is expressed, and a company that retains the primary asset can rebuild the medium even after losing every example of it simultaneously. The lenders kept the Omni Berkshire Place. The guest who stays there tonight is staying at a hotel the Omni brand no longer manages. The guest who stays at the Omni Nashville tonight is staying at a hotel whose $500 million development the Omni brand made possible. That is the 40-year accounting of the 1991 restructuring. The brand outlasted the buildings it had lost. This content was developed using artificial intelligence tools as part of the research, writing, and production process. All AI-generated material was subject to human review, editorial intervention, and approval before publication.